Okay, now let's move on to a typical deployment example. This is a diagram of a number of systems in a cluster. Some of them are running FlexASM. The other ones, one of them is running the ADVM proxy. All 4 systems here are running the database instance. The ASM clients get to run on any node in this cluster, as long as it's a hub node. These are all hub nodes at this particular time. In 12.1, FlexASM doesn't support leaf nodes for Flex clusters. We'll be talking more about Flex clusters tomorrow morning in Chapter 5. In this case, I only have 2 ASM instances. That sets the cardinality to 2. The default, of course, is 3. In this particular case, the databases talk to the ASM instances on that ASM network we discussed earlier. So the red lines there are the ASM network. That can, of course, be the private interconnect as well. The databases actually do their reads and writes directly to storage, for which they're all basically set up. And finally, that little note C up in the upper right, again, the ADVM proxy will service any ACFS requests coming from that particular node. And as a requirement, it's not on the other nodes because they don't have the cluster file system available to them. Moving on, we go to Flex clusters. Flex clusters require FlexASM. Standard ASM is not supported on a Flex cluster, and that's a one-to-one piece. However, FlexASM does not require a Flex cluster, right? It can run on standard clusters, servicing just the same way we do in 11G. FlexASM runs on hub nodes if I have a Flex cluster, not on the leaf nodes. And of course, the benefits. I have a smaller footprint. I don't need to dedicate every system to have an ASM instance. And if an ASM instance fails, it'll start up again on one of the other nodes in the cluster. And that's going to lead us into some questions. So, let's see here. Scott, let's talk about the correct statements that we have here for FlexASM. Yeah, figure these out. FlexASM requires an ASM instance on each cluster node running on a database instance. Yes? No?
No.
You're correct, because it requires 3 running on some. FlexASM allows clients to remotely connect to ASM over a network.
Yes.
Good, good. FlexASM, we have a small pool of instances that can serve a large number of database servers.
Yes.
Good. And finally, if an ASM instance fails, the database clients and the cluster file systems can reconnect to another instance.
Yes, they can.
Good, good. Yeah. So that's the this particular piece. Next question, Dave. If OUI is going to be used to install and configure a 4-node standard cluster, and we're going to use FlexAM, which of these statements is going to describe it? Is it ASM going to run on 2 cluster nodes for high availability?
No.
No, the minimum number is, yeah, okay. ASM runs on the first 3 nodes?
No.
No, because it could when you start up if only 3 nodes are up. But realize that when the 4th node comes and the first node goes down, it's no longer running on those first 3 nodes. How about this? 3 ASM instances are spread across the cluster.
Yes.
That's correct, and that's it. It'll be 3, it'll always be 3 unless we get down to 2 nodes in our cluster, right? And then it'll be 2 ASM instances running on 1 node. And each of the 4 nodes runs an ASM instance.
No.
Not unless we set the cardinality to 4. That's correct. All right, well, we can pop on to the next question.